The cockpit of Flight 447 buzzed with controlled chaos as Maya stepped through the reinforced door. Captain Rodriguez gestured toward the jump seat behind the co-pilot, his weathered face etched with concern. "Ms. Chen, I've been flying commercial for 22 years, and I've never had anything like this happen. Usually when federal agencies want to talk to passengers, they wait until we land." Maya strapped herself in, her eyes immediately scanning the instrument panel with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent years in military aircraft. "Captain, what exactly did they tell you?" Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. "That's First Officer Janet Kim," Rodriguez nodded toward the co-pilot, who was still working the radio with increasingly frustrated gestures. "Janet, bring Miss Chen up to speed." Kim turned around, her young face pale but determined. "Ma'am, about 10 minutes ago we started getting interference on all our communication channels. At first we thought it was atmospheric. But then someone, and I mean someone with serious authority, overrode our entire communication system. They had our flight plan, passenger manifest, even your seat assignment. They told us to establish a secure channel and put you on immediately." "Did they identify themselves?" "Not exactly," Rodriguez said. "But whoever they are, they have access to emergency federal aviation codes that I've only heard about in classified briefings. And they knew details about our aircraft systems that aren't in any public database." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of classified operations settling on her shoulders like an old, heavy coat. "Put me through." Kim handed her a headset, and Maya adjusted the frequency to the encrypted channel she hoped she'd never have to use again. The connection was instant. "Maya Chen, Authentication Tango 77 Alpha November, requesting briefing status." The voice that responded was different from the one that had come through the passenger intercom, older, more familiar, and infinitely more dangerous. "Hello, Maya. It's been a long time." Her blood turned to ice. "General Morrison. I'm sorry to drag you back into this world, but we have a situation that requires your very specific expertise. And unfortunately, we need you now, not after you land in Denver." Maya felt Rodriguez and Kim watching her, their confusion evident. She'd known General Harrison Morrison for 8 years, worked directly under him on 3 classified projects that officially never existed. He was the kind of man who could make entire buildings disappear from satellite imagery, and had done so on more than one occasion. "Sir, I've been out of the loop for 3 years. My clearance has been temporarily reactivated as of 20 minutes ago." "Maya, we have a stolen piece of technology that's about to be used against American soil. The theft occurred at 1,347 hours today from a secure facility in Colorado. The perpetrators are currently airborne and heading toward a major metropolitan area." Maya's mind immediately shifted into tactical analysis mode. "What kind of technology?" "Something you helped design, Project Skyfall." The words hit her like a physical blow. Skyfall, the theoretical kinetic bombardment system she'd worked on during her final year with DARPA, a satellite-based weapons platform that could deliver precision strikes anywhere on Earth within 6 minutes of target acquisition. It had been theoretical, a proof of concept that was supposed to remain locked in classified files forever. "General, Skyfall was never built. We proved it was technically feasible, but the project was scrapped due to international treaty concerns." "Officially, yes. Unofficially, a prototype was constructed and deployed in 2019. Its existence is known to exactly 17 people, and as of 4 hours ago, 3 of those people are dead, and the system is no longer under our control." Rodriguez leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, I don't know what you're discussing, but my passengers." Morrison's voice cut through the cockpit speakers. "Captain Rodriguez, you are now operating under National Security Directive 84. Your passengers are safe as long as you follow instructions precisely. Any deviation will be considered a threat to national security." Maya saw the captain's jaw tighten, but he nodded. She knew the feeling. Being pulled into something vast and dangerous without warning. Having the weight of other people's lives suddenly rest on decisions you weren't prepared to make. "General, what exactly do you need from me?" "The stolen control codes are encrypted with an algorithm you designed. The perpetrators have the hardware, but they need your specific neural pattern to unlock the targeting system. We believe they're going to try to force you to provide it." "My neural pattern?" Maya felt her stomach drop. Sir, that technology was experimental. We only used it in laboratory settings. Maya, listen carefully. The people who stole Skyfall aren't planning to hold it for ransom. Intelligence suggests they intend to use it against Washington, D.C. within the next 4 hours. The only thing stopping them is that they need you to complete the activation sequence. Kim turned around, her face ashen. Ma'am, are you saying someone wants to attack Washington with some kind of space weapon? Morrison's voice continued before Maya could respond. Flight 447 is currently the safest place for Maya to be. The perpetrators believe she's on a routine commercial flight, unaware of the situation. That gives us a tactical advantage, but only temporarily. Maya processed the information rapidly. General, if they have the hardware and 3 of the 17 people with knowledge are dead, how many others are compromised? We're operating on the assumption that several more project members have been eliminated or captured. You may be the only person with the technical knowledge to stop this who's still free and alive. The cockpit fell silent except for the steady hum of the engines. Maya stared out at the endless expanse of clouds below, thinking about the mathematics of orbital mechanics, the devastating precision of kinetic bombardment, and the 147 innocent people sitting behind her who had no idea their flight had just become ground zero for preventing a catastrophic attack on American soil. What do you need me to do? First, we need to keep you alive and free until we can get you to a secure facility with the equipment necessary to counter the stolen system. Second, we need you to help us understand how the perpetrators might try to complete the activation sequence without your cooperation. Rodriguez interrupted. General, my fuel situation is fine for our original destination, but if you need us to divert... Negative, Captain. Changing your flight plan might alert the perpetrators that we're aware of the situation. Continue to Denver as scheduled. We'll have assets in place when you land. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. General, you said they believe I'm unaware of the situation. What happens when they realize that's no longer true? The pause before Morrison's response told her everything she needed to know. Maya, you know as well as I do that in operations of this magnitude, acceptable losses are sometimes unavoidable. But I give you my word that we'll do everything possible to protect the civilians on your flight. She closed her eyes, remembering why she'd left this world behind. The calculations were always the same, weighing lives against lives, choosing who lived and who died, based on strategic value and operational necessity. She'd thought she was done making those choices. I need to know everything about the theft, timeline, personnel involved, current location of the stolen hardware. I'll transmit what I can over secure channels, but Maya, understand that much of this information is compartmentalized. Even I don't have the complete picture. Kim was frantically taking notes, trying to follow a conversation that was clearly beyond her security clearance. Rodriguez maintained his professional demeanor, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. There's something else, Morrison continued. We have reason to believe the perpetrators have inside help. Someone with high-level access provided them with detailed information about project personnel, including your current location and travel plans. The implication hit Maya immediately. They knew I was on this flight. We believe so, which means they may have contingency plans we haven't anticipated. Maya unbuckled her harness and stood up, needing to pace despite the confined space. Her mind was racing through possibilities, none of them good. If the perpetrators knew her location, they might try to intercept the flight. If they had inside help, they might know about this communication. If they were desperate enough to steal a kinetic bombardment system, they were desperate enough to do anything to complete their mission. General, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Is this flight bait? Are you using me and these passengers as a lure to draw out the perpetrators? The silence stretched for several heartbeats. When Morrison finally spoke, his voice was heavy with regret. Maya, in intelligence work, every operation serves multiple purposes. Yes, keeping you safe is our primary objective. But if the perpetrators attempt to intercept Flight 447, it gives us an opportunity to identify and neutralize them before they can complete their attack on Washington. Maya felt sick. She looked at Rodriguez and Kim, both of whom were staring at her with growing alarm. Captain, she said quietly, I think you should know that your passengers aren't just innocent travelers anymore. We're all potential casualties in a military operation. Rodriguez's face hardened. Miss Chen, I've been responsible for passenger safety for over 2 decades. I don't care what kind of military operation this is. My job is to get everyone on this plane to the ground safely. And I respect that, Captain. But you need to understand what we're dealing with. If these people are willing to steal a space-based weapons system to attack Washington, they're not going to hesitate to shoot down a commercial airliner if it serves their purposes. Kim turned back to her instruments, her voice tight with tension. Captain, we're getting another communication. It's not from air traffic control. Maya felt her heart rate spike. Put it on speaker. The voice that filled the cockpit was electronically disguised, but the message was crystal clear. Flight 447, you have something we need. Alter your course to the coordinates we're transmitting now, or we'll be forced to take more direct action. You have 10 minutes to comply. Rodriguez looked at Maya, his face grim. Miss Chen, I think your situation just became everyone's situation. Maya nodded, her mind already shifting into combat mode. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget how to think like a soldier, but some training never really goes away. The question now wasn't whether they were in danger, it was how many people were going to die before this was over. General Morrison, did you copy that transmission? We copied, Maya. We're tracking 2 unidentified aircraft that have been shadowing your flight path for the past 30 minutes. They're military grade, but not broadcasting any identification codes. Kim's voice was barely a whisper. They're following us? Maya moved to the cockpit window, scanning the sky. In the distance, barely visible against the cloud cover, she could make out 2 dark shapes maintaining parallel courses to Flight 447. I see them, she said into her headset. General, what are my orders? Survive, Maya. Whatever it takes, survive and help us stop this attack. The lives of everyone in Washington may depend on it. Maya looked around the cockpit, at Captain Rodriguez gripping his controls with white knuckles, at First Officer Kim frantically working her communications equipment, at the instruments that told the story of a routine commercial flight that had just become anything but routine. Captain, how many passengers do we have aboard? 147, plus crew. And how long until we reach Denver? Under normal circumstances, 93 minutes. Maya nodded, calculating rapidly. The intercepting aircraft would reach weapons range in less than 10 minutes. The stolen Skyfall system could be operational within hours. And somewhere in the chain of command, someone with access to classified information was feeding intelligence to enemies of the United States. General, she said into her headset, I'm going to need everything you can tell me about these perpetrators, and I mean everything. Because if we're going to save this plane and stop an attack on Washington, I need to understand exactly who we're fighting and what they're capable of. Maya, the information I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels. Sir, with all due respect, I think we're past worrying about security clearances. Rodriguez interrupted. Miss Chen, those aircraft are changing course. They're moving to intercept. Maya felt the familiar weight of command decisions settling on her shoulders. In the next few minutes, she was going to have to make choices that would determine whether 147 innocent people lived or died. She was going to have to remember how to be the person she'd worked so hard to stop being. Captain, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Then I need you to trust me completely, even when what I ask you to do seems impossible or insane. Rodriguez met her eyes, and she saw the same determination that had kept him flying commercial aircraft safely for over 2 decades. I'm listening. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the transformation begin, from civilian consultant back to the Air Force engineer, who had once designed weapons systems capable of reshaping the balance of global power. We're not just passengers on this flight anymore, Captain. We're the last line of defense between a stolen weapons system and the destruction of Washington, D.C. And we have approximately 8 minutes to figure out how to win a battle that everyone expects us to lose. Outside the cockpit windows, the 2 dark aircraft were closing fast, their intentions unknown but their capabilities clearly military grade. Maya's mind raced through tactical scenarios, engineering solutions, and the cold mathematics of survival. The woman who had boarded Flight 447 as nobody in particular was gone. In her place stood someone who had spent years designing systems that could kill from orbit, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to save lives was to be willing to take them. General Morrison, she said into her headset, I'm going to need detailed specifications on those intercepting aircraft, and I'm going to need them now. Maya, what are you thinking? She looked out at the approaching aircraft, her mind already working through possibilities that 3 years of civilian life had taught her to suppress. I'm thinking that whoever stole Skyfall made one critical mistake, General. They assumed that I'd forgotten how to fight. The radio crackled with static as the unidentified aircraft moved into attack position, and Maya Chen, former DARPA engineer, former Air Force captain, former designer of weapons that could reshape the world, prepared to remember exactly who she used to be. The intercepting aircraft were F-16 Fighting Falcons, Maya realized with growing dread, their distinctive silhouettes now clearly visible against the afternoon sky. Military hardware meant military training, which meant the people who had stolen Skyfall had resources far beyond typical terrorist organizations. General Morrison, she said into her headset, those are military aircraft. How did unauthorized personnel get access to F-16s? Morrison's response came through layers of static and encryption. Maya, that's part of what makes this situation so dangerous. We believe the perpetrators have infiltrated multiple levels of the defense establishment. Those aircraft were reported stolen from Edwards Air Force Base 6 hours ago. Captain Rodriguez was working his controls with practiced efficiency, but Maya could see the tension in his movements. Miss Chen, commercial aircraft aren't designed for evasive maneuvers. If those fighters decide to engage us, they won't shoot us down, Maya said, though she wasn't entirely certain of that assessment. They need me alive to complete the Skyfall activation sequence, but they might try to force us to land somewhere else. First Officer Kim looked up from her communications panel, her face pale. Ma'am, we're being hailed directly by the lead aircraft. Should I respond? Maya considered the options rapidly. Ignoring the communication might provoke a more aggressive response, but engaging might give away information they couldn't afford to lose. Put them through, but record everything. And Kim, don't acknowledge any details about me or what we've discussed. The voice that came through the cockpit speakers was crisp, professional, and terrifyingly familiar. Flight 447, this is Colonel Sarah Voss, United States Air Force. You are ordered to divert immediately to the coordinates being transmitted to your navigation system. Failure to comply will result in the use of force. Maya's blood turned to ice. Sarah Voss. She'd known Sarah for 6 years, worked with her on 2 classified projects, considered her a friend and trusted colleague. Sarah had been one of the 17 people with knowledge of Project Skyfall. Maya, Morrison's voice came through her private channel. Do you recognize that voice? Yes, sir. Colonel Sarah Voss, Air Force Intelligence. She was part of the Skyfall development team. That's impossible. Colonel Voss died in a car accident 3 weeks ago. Maya felt the world shift around her. Sarah was supposed to be dead, but she was clearly alive and leading a formation of stolen military aircraft in an attempt to capture Flight 447, which meant either the intelligence about her death was wrong or something far more complex was happening. Captain Rodriguez, Sarah's voice continued over the radio, I know this is unusual, but you have a passenger aboard who is critical to national security. We need to take her into protective custody immediately. Rodriguez looked at Maya, his expression questioning. She shook her head emphatically. Colonel Voss, Rodriguez responded carefully, I'm going to need to verify your authority through proper channels before I can comply with any diversion orders. Captain, you don't have time for proper channels. There are hostile forces attempting to intercept your flight. We're here to protect you, but only if you cooperate immediately. Maya's mind raced through the implications. If Sarah was alive and involved in the theft of Skyfall, it meant the inside help Morrison had mentioned went deeper than anyone suspected. It also meant that Sarah knew Maya's capabilities, her training, and her psychological profile better than almost anyone. Kim, Maya whispered, can you patch me through to the Air Force frequency without Captain Rodriguez's voice being transmitted? Kim nodded and made rapid adjustments to the communication system. Maya switched to a channel she hoped Sarah would remember from their joint operations. Sarah, this is Maya. What the hell is going on? The response was immediate and personal in a way that confirmed Maya's worst fears. Maya, thank God you're alive. Listen to me very carefully. Everything you've been told is a lie. Morrison isn't trying to protect you. He's trying to eliminate you. The people who stole Skyfall are planning to frame you for the attack on Washington. Maya felt the world tilt. Either Sarah was telling the truth and Morrison was part of a conspiracy to destroy her, or Sarah was part of the conspiracy and trying to manipulate her into compliance. Both possibilities were terrifying. Sarah, you're supposed to be dead. Faked death was the only way to stay alive long enough to figure out what's really happening. Maya, there's a kill order out on you. Morrison activated it the moment they realized you were the only person who could expose the real purpose of Skyfall. Maya's hands were shaking now. She looked at Rodriguez and Kim, both of whom were watching her with growing alarm. These were decent people, professionals trying to do their jobs, and they were caught in the middle of something that could destroy them all. General Morrison, she said into her secure channel, Colonel Voss says there's a kill order out on me. Is that true? The pause before Morrison's response was a fraction too long. Maya, Colonel Voss is not who she appears to be. The woman speaking to you is either an imposter or has been compromised by hostile forces. Do not trust anything she tells you. But she knows operational details that only the real Sarah Voss would know. Maya, in intelligence work, information can be extracted through various means. The person you're speaking to has access to Colonel Voss's memories and knowledge, but that doesn't mean she's working in American interests. Maya felt trapped between two versions of reality, both terrifying. Either her former friend Sarah was trying to save her from a conspiracy that included General Morrison, or Sarah had been compromised and was trying to deliver her to enemies who would use her to activate a weapons system capable of devastating Washington. Captain, she said quietly, I need you to make a decision that's going to affect everyone on this plane, and I need you to make it in the next 30 seconds. Rodriguez's voice was steady despite the impossible situation. What are my options? Option 1. We comply with Colonel Voss's demands and divert to the coordinates she's provided. If she's telling the truth, we land safely and I'm taken into protective custody. If she's lying, we're delivered to people who will force me to activate a weapons system that could kill hundreds of thousands of people. Kim turned around, her face ashen. What's option 2? Option 2, we continue to Denver as planned, relying on General Morrison's promise of protection when we land. If he's telling the truth, we land safely and I help stop a terrorist attack. If he's lying, we land directly into a trap designed to eliminate me and anyone who might expose the truth about Skyfall. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, processing the impossible choice. Miss Chen, in your professional opinion, which option gives my passengers the best chance of survival? Maya closed her eyes, running through the tactical mathematics she'd hoped never to use again. Both options carried enormous risks. Both required trusting people who might be planning to betray her. Both could result in the deaths of innocent people. Honestly, Captain, I don't know. But I can tell you that whoever is lying, they're playing for stakes high enough to steal military aircraft and assassinate project personnel. These aren't people who are going to hesitate to kill civilians if it serves their purposes. Maya, Sarah's voice cut through the cockpit speakers, you have 2 minutes to convince Captain Rodriguez to comply with our instructions. After that, we'll be forced to take more direct action. Maya, Morrison's voice came through the secure channel simultaneously, do not comply with their demands. We have assets moving to intercept the hostile aircraft. Maintain your current course. Rodriguez looked at Maya, and in his eyes she saw the weight of command, the terrible responsibility of making decisions that affected other people's lives. She'd carried that weight for years in the military, and she'd left it behind because it had nearly destroyed her. Now it was back, heavier than ever. Captain, there's a third option. I'm listening. We don't trust anyone. We assume everyone is compromised, and we figure out how to survive on our own. Kim's voice was barely a whisper. How do we do that? Maya looked out at the F-16s maintaining formation alongside Flight 447, then at the instrument panel that told the story of a commercial airliner caught between forces it was never designed to handle. We use the one advantage we have that none of them are expecting. Which is? Maya smiled grimly, feeling the familiar cold clarity that came with accepting an impossible mission. They all think I'm just a former engineer who's been out of the game for 3 years. They're expecting me to act like a civilian, frightened, confused, dependent on their protection or guidance. Rodriguez nodded slowly, but you're not a civilian. No, Captain, I'm not. And it's time I reminded everyone exactly what that means. Maya moved to the communication panel, her fingers flying over controls she hadn't touched in years but still understood perfectly. Sarah, this is Maya. I'm going to make you a counteroffer. I'm listening. You want me to help you complete the Skyfall activation sequence. Morrison wants me to help him stop a terrorist attack. But what if you're both lying? What if Skyfall isn't what either of you says it is? The silence on both channels told her she'd hit something important. Maya, Morrison's voice carried a warning tone, you don't have clearance for that level of speculation. Maya, Sarah said simultaneously, you're overthinking this. People are going to die if you don't trust me. Here's what I think, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger. I think Skyfall was never just a kinetic bombardment system. I think it was designed for something else entirely, something that would require the specific neural pattern encryption I developed. And I think both of you know exactly what that something else is. Rodriguez was watching her with growing respect. Miss Chen, what are you getting at? Captain, I think we're not just caught between competing factions trying to control a weapons system. I think we're caught between competing factions trying to control me. Because I'm not just the key to unlocking Skyfall. I'm the key to understanding what it was really built to do. The radio crackled with competing voices as both Morrison and Sarah tried to regain control of the conversation, but Maya had already moved beyond their influence. She was thinking like an engineer again, analyzing systems and looking for the hidden functions that didn't appear in the official specifications. Kim, can you access the flight computer's navigation system? Yes, ma'am. But why? Because I need to plot a course to somewhere neither Morrison nor Sarah expects us to go. Somewhere I can access information that will tell us what Skyfall really is and why everyone is so desperate to control it. Rodriguez's voice was steady but concerned. Miss Chen, where exactly are you thinking of taking my plane? Maya looked out at the F-16s, then at the endless sky beyond. In her mind, she was already calculating fuel requirements, flight times, and the location of a secure facility she'd helped design years ago. A facility that contained backup records of every classified project she'd ever worked on. NORAD, Captain, we're going to Cheyenne Mountain. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Morrison's voice cut through the secure channel with military authority. Negative, Maya. You are not authorized to approach NORAD installations. Sarah's voice came through the main radio with equal intensity. Maya, if you take that plane to Cheyenne Mountain, you'll be starting a war you can't win. Rodriguez looked at Maya, his expression grim but determined. Miss Chen, if we change course now, we're committing to something we can't take back. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. Captain, I've spent 3 years trying to forget that sometimes the only way to prevent a war is to be willing to start one. But I can't forget anymore. Too many people are going to die if we don't figure out the truth about Skyfall. She moved to the cockpit window and looked out at the F-16s. In the lead aircraft, she could see a figure in the pilot's seat, someone who might be her former friend Sarah Voss, or might be someone else entirely using Sarah's identity and knowledge. Kim, plot a course for Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado. That's the closest airfield to NORAD, and it's where we can get answers that don't depend on trusting people who may be trying to kill us. Rodriguez was already making course adjustments, his professional demeanor masking what Maya knew had to be serious concerns about taking a commercial airliner full of passengers into what might become a military conflict zone. Maya, Morrison's voice carried a tone of finality. If you approach NORAD without authorization, you will be considered a hostile threat. The consequences will be severe. Maya, Sarah's voice was almost pleading, you're making a mistake that will cost thousands of lives. Trust me, I'm trying to save you. Maya picked up her headset and addressed both channels simultaneously. General Morrison, Colonel Voss, I've spent my entire career designing systems that could reshape the balance of global power. I've made weapons that could kill from orbit, guidance systems that could strike any target on Earth, and encryption algorithms that protect America's most dangerous secrets. But I've never designed anything that required my specific neural pattern to operate. Maya moved to the cockpit window, scanning the sky. In the distance, she could see contrails that hadn't been there minutes earlier, the telltale signs of high-performance aircraft moving at combat speeds. General Morrison, she said into her headset, are those your aircraft or someone else's? Maya, the situation has become more complex than we initially briefed you. NORAD has activated emergency protocols, and there are now multiple agencies involved in this operation. That's not an answer, General. Maya, for your own safety and the safety of everyone on that plane, I strongly recommend you reconsider your course to Peterson Air Force Base. Maya felt the familiar chill of military operations gone wrong. When generals started talking about complex situations and multiple agencies, it usually meant someone had lost control of the operation. "Sarah," she said, switching to the open channel, "what do you see out there?" "Maya, I'm reading at least 8 aircraft converging on your position. Some are friendly, some aren't, and some I can't identify. This is about to become a very dangerous piece of airspace." Rodriguez was monitoring air traffic control frequencies, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. "Ms. Chen, I'm getting conflicting instructions from multiple sources. Denver Center wants us to maintain course. Peterson Approach is telling us to stay clear of restricted airspace. And someone claiming to be NORAD Command is ordering us to land immediately at the nearest airport." Maya's mind raced through the tactical implications. If multiple aircraft were converging on Flight 447, it meant the situation had escalated beyond a simple extraction or protection operation. It meant someone had decided that preventing Maya from reaching NORAD was worth risking a major military incident. "Kim, patch me through to NORAD directly. Use emergency authentication codes Tango 77 Alpha November." Kim's fingers flew over the communication equipment. "Ma'am, I'm not getting a response from NORAD. The frequency is active, but no one's acknowledging." "That's impossible. NORAD monitors emergency frequencies constantly." Rodriguez looked up from his instruments. "Ms. Chen, what if NORAD isn't responding because they can't? What if whatever's happening down there is big enough to compromise their communication systems?" The possibility hit Maya like ice water. If NORAD was compromised, it would explain why multiple aircraft were converging on their position. It would also mean that the theft of Skyfall was part of something much larger than a simple terrorist attack. "General Morrison," she said into her headset, "is NORAD under attack?" The pause before Morrison's response confirmed her worst fears. "Maya, I can't discuss operational details over unsecured channels." "General, we're flying into a potential combat zone with 147 civilians aboard. I think operational security is less important than keeping these people alive." "Maya, trust me when I say that the safest thing you can do right now is land at the nearest civilian airport and wait for extraction." Maya looked out at the converging aircraft, then at Rodriguez and Kim, both of whom were watching her with expressions that mixed professional competence with barely controlled fear. "Captain, in your professional opinion, what are our chances of reaching Peterson Air Force Base safely?" Rodriguez was studying his radar display, calculating intercept courses and closing speeds. "Honestly, if those aircraft decide to stop us, we don't have much choice in the matter. Commercial airliners aren't designed for evasive action. But we might make it if they're not all working together." "Maybe, but it would require flying through what's essentially a potential air battle, and that's not something I can recommend with passengers aboard." Maya felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Every choice carried enormous risks. Landing at a civilian airport might deliver her directly to people who wanted to use her to activate Skyfall. Continuing to Peterson might get everyone killed in aerial combat. And staying airborne indefinitely wasn't an option with limited fuel. "There's another possibility," she said quietly. "I'm listening." "What if we don't try to land anywhere? What if we stay airborne and force them to show their true intentions?" Kim turned around, her face pale. "Ma'am, we can't stay airborne indefinitely. You're talking about using my plane as bait. I'm talking about using your plane to gather intelligence that might save a lot more lives than just the people aboard Flight 447. The radio crackled with Sarah's voice. "Maya, I don't know what you're thinking, but you need to make a decision soon. The aircraft approaching from Colorado aren't all friendly, and this situation is about to get very complicated." Morrison's voice cut through the secure channel. "Maya, you have approximately 15 minutes before this airspace becomes a restricted military zone. After that, any aircraft in the area will be considered hostile." Maya felt the familiar clarity that came with accepting an impossible mission. She was going to have to trust her instincts, her training, and her ability to read the tactical situation accurately. "Captain, I want you to maintain course toward Peterson, but reduce speed as much as safely possible. We're going to let those aircraft catch up to us and see what they do." "Miss Chen, that's extremely risky." "Everything we do from this point forward is extremely risky. But at least this way, we'll know who we're really fighting." Rodriguez adjusted the throttles, reducing Flight 447's speed to just above stall velocity. Around them, the converging aircraft began to close the distance more rapidly. "Maya," Sarah's voice carried a note of urgency. "Whatever you're planning, you need to do it quickly. I'm reading weapons systems activation on at least 3 of the approaching aircraft." Maya's blood turned cold. Weapons systems activation meant someone was preparing to shoot, which meant the situation had moved beyond intimidation into active combat. "General Morrison, are your people planning to shoot down civilian aircraft?" "Maya, we will use whatever force is necessary to prevent Skyfall from being activated." The implication was clear and terrifying. Morrison was willing to kill everyone on Flight 447 to prevent Maya from falling into the wrong hands, which meant he either believed she was already compromised or he was part of the conspiracy she was trying to escape. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think we just got our answer about who to trust." Rodriguez's voice was grim but determined. "What do you need me to do?" Maya looked out at the approaching aircraft, her mind calculating distances, fuel consumption, and the deadly mathematics of aerial combat involving civilian aircraft. "I need you to remember that you're not just an airline captain anymore. For the next hour, you're a military transport pilot carrying the most important cargo in the world." "And what cargo is that?" Maya met his eyes, feeling the full weight of what she was about to ask him to do. "The only person who can prevent a weapons system capable of reshaping global power from falling into the hands of people willing to start a war to control it." Outside the cockpit windows, the first of the military aircraft was now visible without magnification, a sleek fighter moving at intercept speed, its weapons pods clearly visible against the afternoon sky. The battle for Flight 447 was about to begin. "Contact bearing 270, closing fast," Kim announced, her voice tight with tension as she monitored the radar display. "It's definitely military, and it's not responding to any air traffic control frequencies." Maya pressed herself against the cockpit window, studying the approaching aircraft through the small porthole. The fighter was an F-22 Raptor, America's most advanced air superiority fighter, nearly invisible to radar and capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. Seeing one meant serious money and serious connections. "That's not an F-16, she said grimly. "Someone just escalated this situation significantly." Rodriguez was working his controls with the precision of a pilot who had spent decades keeping aircraft safely in the sky under all conditions. "Ms. Chen, F-22s don't get stolen from airbases. If that's a Raptor, it means we're dealing with people who have official authorization." "Or people who have eliminated everyone with official authorization," Maya replied, her mind racing through the implications. "General Morrison, that's an F-22 approaching our position. I need to know if it's one of yours." Morrison's response came through layers of static and what sounded like significant background activity. "Maya, the situation has become extremely fluid. Multiple agencies are now involved, and I may not have complete information about all aircraft in your vicinity." "That's not an answer, General." "Maya, for operational security reasons, I cannot confirm or deny the identity or authorization of specific aircraft." Maya felt the cold certainty of being abandoned by her own command structure. Morrison's non-answers meant either he'd lost control of the operation, or he was part of whatever was happening and could no longer maintain the pretense of protecting her. "Sarah," she said, switching to the open channel, "what's your assessment of the Raptor?" "Maya, I'm not reading any friendly identification codes from that aircraft, and it's moving into attack position." Kim turned around, her face pale. "Ma'am, what does attack position mean exactly?" "It means the pilot is maneuvering to achieve weapons lock," Maya explained, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "F-22s carry air-to-air missiles with a range of over 60 miles. If that pilot decides we're a threat..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the cockpit understood that a commercial airliner had no defense against military-grade weapons systems. Rodriguez was monitoring multiple radio frequencies, trying to establish communication with air traffic control, military command, or anyone who might be able to clarify the situation. "Ms. Chen, I'm getting conflicting reports. Some sources are reporting a terrorist hijacking in progress. Others are reporting an unauthorized military exercise. And at least one frequency is claiming that Flight 447 is carrying a nuclear device." Maya's blood turned to ice. "A nuclear device?" "That's what they're reporting, ma'am. If someone is spreading disinformation about what we're carrying, it could justify almost any level of military response." Maya's mind raced through the tactical implications. If various agencies believed Flight 447 was carrying a nuclear weapon or had been hijacked by terrorists, they would be authorized to use lethal force to prevent it from reaching a populated area. It was a perfect cover for eliminating her while maintaining the appearance of legitimate national security operations. Kim, patch me through to air traffic control. Use emergency frequency, highest priority. Kim adjusted the radio equipment rapidly. Go ahead, ma'am. Denver Center, this is Flight 447. We are a legitimate commercial flight carrying no hazardous materials, no weapons, and no hostile personnel. We are being pursued by unidentified military aircraft and request immediate assistance. The response was immediate but not reassuring. Flight 447, you are ordered to land immediately at Denver International Airport. Any deviation from this instruction will result in military intercept. Denver Center, we are currently being intercepted by military aircraft, requesting clarification on the authority for these intercepts. The pause before the response told Maya everything she needed to know. Flight 447, we have no information about authorized military aircraft in your vicinity. Suggest you comply with any instructions from intercepting aircraft. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of being cut loose by command authority. Air traffic control was disavowing knowledge of the military aircraft, which meant someone with higher authority had classified the entire situation beyond civilian air traffic management. Captain, she said quietly, we're on our own. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Miss Chen, in that case, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. What is this Skyfall system? And why is everyone so desperate to control it? Maya looked at Kim, who was frantically trying to monitor multiple radio frequencies while maintaining communication with the various aircraft surrounding them. The young first officer deserved to know what she'd been pulled into. Skyfall was designed as a kinetic bombardment system. Essentially, tungsten rods dropped from orbital platforms that could strike any target on Earth with the force of a nuclear weapon, but without the radiation. But that was just the cover story. Rodriguez's hands tightened on the controls. What was the real purpose? I designed the targeting and guidance systems, and I built in neural pattern recognition that would require my specific brainwave patterns to activate the weapons. At the time, I thought it was a security measure to prevent unauthorized use. Kim turned around, her face ashen. You mean the system can only be activated by you personally? That's what I thought. But now I'm realizing that the neural pattern recognition wasn't a security feature. It was the primary design requirement. Skyfall wasn't built as a weapon system that happened to require my authorization. It was built specifically as a weapon system that could only be controlled by me. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Rodriguez was the first to speak. Ms. Chen, are you saying someone built a weapons platform specifically designed for you to operate? I'm saying someone built a weapons platform that can only be operated by someone with my exact neural patterns. Which means either they planned from the beginning to force me to use it or… Maya's voice trailed off as the full horror of the situation became clear. Or what? Kim asked. Or they built it knowing they could extract my neural patterns and use them to create someone else who could operate the system. Someone who would look like me, sound like me, and think like me, but who would be completely under their control. The cockpit fell silent except for the steady hum of the engines and the crackling of radio communications. Outside, the F-22 Raptor was now clearly visible, its sleek form cutting through the sky with lethal precision. Maya, Sarah's voice cut through the radio static, you need to listen to me very carefully. The people who stole Skyfall aren't planning to force you to activate it. They're planning to replace you with someone who will activate it willingly. What do you mean, replace me? Maya, the technology for creating neural pattern duplicates has advanced significantly since you left the program. They can now create a perfect copy of someone's decision-making patterns, their memories, even their emotional responses. The copy believes it's the original person and acts accordingly. Maya felt the world shift around her. That's impossible. The technology for that level of neural modeling doesn't exist. It does now, and Maya, I think they've already created copies of several project members, including me. Rodriguez looked at Maya with growing alarm. Ms. Chen, are you saying the person we're talking to might not be the real Colonel Voss? I'm saying I don't know anymore. And that's exactly the problem they're counting on. The radio crackled with Morrison's voice. Maya, do not trust anything Colonel Voss tells you. We have confirmed that she has been compromised by hostile forces. Sarah's voice responded immediately. Maya, Morrison is the one who's been compromised. The kill order on you came directly from his office. Maya felt trapped between competing versions of reality, each more terrifying than the last. Either her former colleagues had been replaced by neural copies designed to manipulate her, or her own command structure had been compromised and was trying to eliminate her. Kim, how many aircraft are we dealing with now? Kim checked her displays. I'm reading at least 12 contacts, ma'am. Some are maintaining distance, others are closing rapidly. And how long until we reach Peterson Air Force Base? At current speed, approximately 45 minutes. Maya calculated rapidly. 12 military aircraft meant a significant operation involving multiple agencies or organizations. That level of coordination required either massive government resources or massive corruption of government resources. Captain, I need you to make another impossible decision. Rodriguez met her eyes. I'm listening. We can continue toward Peterson and hope that NORAD can sort out who's legitimate and who isn't. We can land at Denver and hope that whoever meets us there has our best interests in mind. Or we can try something completely different. Such as? Maya moved to the navigation display, studying their current position relative to various airports and military installations. Such as landing at a civilian airport that none of these people are expecting, buying ourselves time to figure out who we can actually trust. Kim was monitoring radio frequencies, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. Ma'am, I'm picking up communications between the military aircraft. Some of them are definitely not working together. What do you mean? I mean, some of them are giving orders to intercept us, and others are giving orders to protect us, and at least 2 of them are giving orders to engage each other. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. If military aircraft were preparing to engage each other over Flight 447, it meant the situation had moved beyond a simple extraction operation into something approaching aerial combat between American forces. General Morrison, she said into her headset, are American military aircraft about to start shooting at each other? Maya, I cannot discuss operational details that might compromise ongoing missions. General, there are 147 civilians on this plane. If American aircraft start shooting at each other in our vicinity, some of those civilians are going to die. The pause before Morrison's response was long enough to confirm Maya's worst fears. Maya, in operations of this magnitude, some casualties are unavoidable. Our primary objective is preventing Skyfall from being activated, even if that requires difficult choices. Maya felt the cold certainty of being abandoned by her own government. Morrison was willing to sacrifice Flight 447 and everyone aboard to prevent her from falling into the wrong hands, or to prevent her from exposing whatever Skyfall really was. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Sarah, she said, switching channels, what's your assessment of the tactical situation? Maya, I'm reading weapons systems activation on multiple aircraft. Someone is about to start shooting, and when they do, everyone in this airspace becomes a target. Rodriguez was studying his fuel gauges and navigation displays. Miss Chen, if we're going to change course, we need to do it soon. And we need to decide where we're going. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of command decisions that could save or damn hundreds of lives. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget how to make these choices, but some training never really disappears. Captain, there's an abandoned military airfield about 60 miles northeast of our current position, Lowry Air Force Base. It was decommissioned in the 1990s, but the runways are still maintained for emergency use. Kim looked up from her navigation computer. Ma'am, why would we want to land at an abandoned airfield? Because it's the one place none of these aircraft will expect us to go. And because it gives us time to figure out who we're really fighting without putting civilians at risk. Rodriguez was already calculating course changes and fuel requirements. Miss Chen, landing at an unmaintained airfield carries significant risks. So does staying in airspace where American military aircraft are about to start shooting at each other. The radio exploded with competing voices as multiple aircraft tried to establish communication simultaneously. Through the chaos, Maya could hear Sarah's voice. Maya, you have approximately 3 minutes before this situation becomes unsurvivable. Morrison's voice cut through the secure channel. Maya, any deviation from approved flight plans will be considered an act of terrorism. Maya looked out at the sky filled with military aircraft, each carrying enough firepower to destroy Flight 447 instantly. In her mind, she was already calculating approach speeds, runway lengths, and the probability of landing safely at an airfield that hadn't seen regular traffic in decades. "Captain, set course for Lowry Air Force Base, maximum speed." Rodriguez's hands moved over the controls with practiced efficiency. "Miss Chen, I hope you know what you're doing." Maya strapped herself into the jump seat, feeling the familiar weight of accepting an impossible mission. "Captain, I stopped knowing what I was doing about 30 minutes ago, but I know that staying in this airspace is going to get everyone killed. And I know that landing where any of these people expect us to land is going to result in the activation of a weapons system that could reshape global power." Outside the cockpit windows, the military aircraft were repositioning themselves in response to Flight 447's course change. Some were moving to intercept, others were moving to escort, and at least two were maneuvering into position to engage each other. "Kim, broadcast on all frequencies that we are a civilian aircraft carrying no weapons, no hazardous materials, and no hostile personnel. Make it clear that we are changing course to avoid military operations, not to threaten anyone." Kim's voice carried across multiple radio frequencies. "All aircraft, this is Commercial Flight 447. We are deviating from course to avoid potential military conflict. We pose no threat to any personnel or installations." The response was immediate and contradictory. Some voices ordered them to maintain course. Others ordered them to land immediately. And at least one voice, Sarah's, warned them that they had less than 2 minutes before someone started shooting. Maya felt the aircraft bank sharply as Rodriguez adjusted course toward the abandoned airfield. Through the cockpit window, she could see the military aircraft repositioning themselves, their movements precise and deadly. In the distance, she caught a glimpse of something that made her blood freeze, missile trails against the afternoon sky. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think the shooting just started. We're deep into this incredible story now, and I hope you're as captivated as I am by these unfolding events. The amount of effort that goes into researching, writing, and narrating these novel-length stories is immense. We're talking about creating content equivalent to a published book. But it's worth it to bring you stories that truly engage and transport you to another world. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please take a second to like this video and share it with friends who appreciate great storytelling. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating these detailed, epic narratives. We still have so much more to discover together, so let's see how this situation unfolds." The missile trails streaked across the sky like deadly calligraphy, white contrails marking the beginning of aerial combat between American forces. Maya watched in horrified fascination as two F-16s engaged each other at high altitude, their weapons systems painting deadly geometry against the afternoon clouds. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez breathed, his hands steady on the controls despite the chaos erupting around them. "American aircraft are shooting at each other." Kim was frantically monitoring radio frequencies, trying to parse the competing communications flooding the airwaves. "Ma'am, I'm picking up multiple distress signals." "Someone's been hit." Maya pressed against the cockpit window, scanning the sky for signs of damage or debris. In the distance, she could see a dark smoke trail descending toward the Earth, the remains of one of the military aircraft. "General Morrison," she said into her headset, "American pilots are dying out there. What the hell is happening?" Morrison's response came through heavy static and what sounded like significant background chaos. "Maya, the situation has become extremely complex. We have confirmed infiltration of multiple agencies, and it's become difficult to distinguish between legitimate and hostile forces." "General, that's not an answer. Are your people shooting at each other because they don't know who to trust? Or because some of them aren't really your people?" The pause before Morrison's response told Maya everything she needed to know. "Maya, we have reason to believe that several aircraft in your vicinity are operated by personnel who have been compromised or replaced." Maya felt the world shift around her. "Replaced? You mean like what Sarah described? Neural pattern duplicates?" "Maya, I cannot discuss classified technologies over unsecured channels." "General, we're flying through a combat zone where the people shooting at each other might not even be human. I think classification levels are less important than keeping these civilians alive." Rodriguez was executing evasive maneuvers as fragments from the aerial battle began falling toward Flight 447's altitude. "Ms. Chen, we need to get out of this airspace immediately. Commercial aircraft aren't designed to operate in combat zones." Maya was studying the tactical display, trying to understand the pattern of engagement. "Captain, how far are we from Lowry Air Force Base?" "Approximately 28 minutes at current speed, assuming we don't run into any more military aircraft." Kim looked up from her radio equipment, her face pale. "Ma'am, we're being hailed by an aircraft identifying itself as Air Force One." Maya's blood turned to ice. "Air Force One? That's impossible. The president doesn't fly into active combat zones." "Ma'am, they're using proper authentication codes, and they're requesting immediate communication with you personally." Maya felt the familiar chill of operations gone completely wrong. If Air Force One was in this airspace, it meant either the president was personally involved in the Skyfall situation, or someone was impersonating Air Force One for reasons that were probably catastrophic. "Put them through, but record everything." The voice that came through the cockpit speakers was crisp, professional, and carried the unmistakable authority of presidential communications. "Ms. Chen, this is Air Force One. We need to establish immediate communication with you regarding Project Skyfall." Maya's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. "Air Force One, this is Maya Chen. I need verification of your identity and authorization for this communication." "Ms. Chen, we are transmitting authentication codes now. You should recognize Presidential Emergency Action Protocol 7. Maya felt her heart stop. Protocol 7 was the emergency authorization for nuclear weapons use, the highest level of presidential authority, reserved for situations involving imminent threats to national survival. "Air Force One, Protocol 7 is for nuclear authorization. Why are you using nuclear protocols for a kinetic bombardment system?" The pause before the response was long enough to confirm Maya's worst fears. "Ms. Chen, Skyfall is not just a kinetic bombardment system. It's a delivery platform for enhanced nuclear devices. The stolen system is capable of deploying multiple warheads with yields equivalent to strategic nuclear weapons." Maya felt the world collapse around her. She designed guidance systems for what she thought was a conventional kinetic weapon. If Skyfall was actually a nuclear delivery platform, it meant she'd unknowingly created the targeting systems for a weapon of mass destruction. "That's impossible," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I would have known if I was working on nuclear delivery systems." "Ms. Chen, the nuclear components were integrated after your work was completed. Your guidance and neural pattern recognition systems were designed to interface with conventional kinetic rods, but they're equally effective with nuclear payloads." Rodriguez was listening to the conversation with growing alarm. "Ms. Chen, are you saying you helped design a system that can deliver nuclear weapons?" Maya couldn't answer. Her mind was reeling through the implications of what she'd just learned. If Skyfall could deploy nuclear weapons, and if it required her neural patterns to operate, then she wasn't just the key to a conventional weapons system. She was the key to a nuclear weapons platform capable of destroying entire cities. "Sarah," she said, switching to the open channel, "did you know Skyfall was nuclear capable?" Sarah's response was immediate and grim. "Maya, I suspected, but I wasn't certain until today. The compartmentalization was too effective. None of us had the complete picture." "Sarah, if Skyfall is nuclear capable, then everyone who worked on it is a target for elimination. They can't afford to leave witnesses who might expose the true nature of the system. Maya, that's why I faked my death. And that's why you're in so much danger. You're not just the key to operating Skyfall. You're proof that the system exists." Kim turned around, her face ashen. "Ma'am, what does this mean for us?" Maya looked at the young first officer, then at Captain Rodriguez, both of whom were caught in a situation far beyond anything they'd been trained to handle. Around them, the radio crackled with communications from aircraft engaged in aerial combat, each transmission revealing more of the chaos that had erupted around Flight 447. "It means that every person on this plane is now a potential casualty in a conflict involving nuclear weapons," Maya said quietly. "And it means that landing anywhere is going to put us directly into the hands of people who might be willing to use those weapons." The radio erupted with Air Force One's voice again. "Ms. Chen, we need you to understand the gravity of this situation. If the stolen Skyfall system is activated, it could deploy nuclear weapons against multiple American cities simultaneously. The death toll could reach millions. And what exactly are you asking me to do about it? Ms. Chen, we need you to help us create a counter system that can disable Skyfall remotely. Your neural patterns are the key not just to operating the system, but to shutting it down. Maya felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. If she helped create a counter system, she would be admitting her role in creating a nuclear weapons platform. If she refused, millions of people might die in nuclear attacks on American cities. Air Force One, how do I know you're really the president and not another neural pattern duplicate? The question hung in the air for several heartbeats before the response came. Ms. Chen, you don't, and that's exactly the problem we're all facing. Maya felt the cold certainty of being trapped in a situation where trust was impossible, and every choice carried catastrophic consequences. She looked out at the military aircraft still engaged in aerial combat, wondering how many of the pilots were human and how many were artificial copies programmed to believe they were protecting national security. "Captain," she said quietly, "I need you to make one more impossible decision." Rodriguez met her eyes, his expression grim but determined. "What are my options?" Option 1. We land at Lowry Air Force Base and hope that whoever meets us there is human and has legitimate authority. Option 2. We continue flying until we run out of fuel, forcing everyone to show their true intentions. Option 3. We try to reach a location where I can access independent verification of who's really in charge. Kim was monitoring multiple displays, her voice tight with tension. "Ma'am, we're running low on fuel. At current consumption, we have maybe 40 minutes of flying time left." "And where could we reach that might have independent verification?" Rodriguez asked. Maya studied the navigation display, calculating distances and fuel requirements. "There's a NORAD backup facility in Nebraska. It's not widely known, but it has communication equipment that can verify presidential authority independent of normal channels." "How far?" "With our current fuel load, we might just make it, but it would be cutting it very close." Rodriguez was already calculating course changes and fuel consumption rates. "Ms. Chen, if we're wrong about the location or the fuel requirements, we're going to end up making an emergency landing in a cornfield." "Captain, if we're wrong about who to trust, we're going to end up delivering a nuclear weapons platform to people who want to destroy American cities." The radio crackled with Morrison's voice. "Maya, you are not authorized to approach any NORAD facilities. Any attempt to do so will result in your aircraft being classified as hostile." Air Force One's voice cut through immediately afterward. "Ms. Chen, General Morrison has been relieved of command. Do not follow any instructions from him." Sarah's voice joined the chaos. "Maya, both Morrison and Air Force One are compromised. Don't trust either of them." Maya felt trapped between competing authorities, each claiming legitimacy and each warning her against the others. In the distance, the aerial combat was intensifying, with more aircraft joining the battle and more debris falling toward the Earth. "Kim, patch me through to the emergency broadcast system. I want to send a message to every communication facility in the country." Kim's hands flew over the radio equipment. "Ma'am, that's going to alert everyone to exactly what we're doing." "Good. It's time to stop playing by classified rules and start playing by survival rules." Maya took the microphone and adjusted it to broadcast on every emergency frequency simultaneously. "This is Dr. Maya Chen, former DARPA engineer and designer of Project Skyfall. I am currently aboard Commercial Flight 447, which is being pursued by multiple military aircraft. I am declaring a national security emergency and requesting immediate assistance from any legitimate government authority." She paused, knowing that her next words would either save millions of lives or sign the death warrant for everyone on Flight 447. Project Skyfall is not just a kinetic bombardment system. It is a nuclear weapons delivery platform capable of deploying multiple warheads against American cities. The system requires my specific neural patterns to operate, and it has been stolen by unknown personnel. I repeat, stolen nuclear weapons are currently being prepared for deployment against American targets. The silence that followed Maya's broadcast was profound and terrifying. Every radio frequency went quiet simultaneously, as if the entire communications infrastructure of the United States had suddenly stopped functioning. "Well," Rodriguez said quietly, "I think you just got everyone's attention." Kim was monitoring her displays with growing alarm. Ma'am, I'm reading massive increases in military aircraft activity across the entire region. Something big is happening. Maya felt the weight of what she'd just done. By broadcasting the truth about Skyfall on emergency frequencies, she'd forced every intelligence agency, military command, and government authority to respond. The question was whether that response would be coordinated protection or coordinated elimination. Captain, how long until we reach the Nebraska facility? 38 minutes, assuming we don't encounter any more obstacles. The radio crackled back to life with a voice Maya didn't recognize, older, authoritative, and carrying the weight of absolute command. Dr. Chen, this is Admiral Rebecca Hayes, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Your broadcast has been received and verified. We are implementing emergency protocols to secure all nuclear assets and verify the identity of all personnel with access to strategic weapon systems. Maya felt a wave of relief. Admiral Hayes was a legend in military circles, a career officer known for uncompromising integrity and absolute loyalty to constitutional authority. Admiral Hayes, this is Maya Chen. Can you verify your identity? Dr. Chen, I'm transmitting authentication codes that should confirm my authority. I need you to understand that your situation has triggered the highest level of national security response. We are currently operating under the assumption that multiple agencies have been compromised. Maya looked at Kim, who was frantically checking the authentication codes against classified databases. Ma'am, the codes check out. This appears to be legitimate Joint Chiefs communication. Admiral, what's your assessment of the tactical situation? Dr. Chen, we have confirmed that at least 14 military aircraft in your vicinity are operating without proper authorization. Some are crewed by personnel who may be neural pattern duplicates. Others are under the control of individuals who have been compromised through other means. Rodriguez was monitoring multiple displays, his expression growing more concerned by the minute. Admiral, we're a commercial aircraft with civilian passengers. Can you provide us with safe passage to a secure facility? Captain Rodriguez, we are coordinating with multiple agencies to establish a secure corridor for Flight 447. However, you should be aware that some of the aircraft pursuing you are armed with weapons specifically designed to disable rather than destroy. Maya felt a chill. Disable how? Dr. Chen, intelligence suggests that the hostile forces have access to electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to disable aircraft electronics without destroying the aircraft itself. Their objective appears to be forcing you down alive rather than eliminating you. Kim turned around, her face pale. Ma'am, what happens if they disable our electronics? We lose all navigation, communication, and flight control systems, Rodriguez answered grimly. Commercial aircraft can't fly without electronics. We'd be forced to make an emergency landing wherever they wanted us to land. Maya's mind raced through the implications. If the hostile forces could disable Flight 447 without killing the passengers, they could capture her while maintaining plausible deniability about civilian casualties. Admiral Hayes, do we have any defense against EMP weapons? Dr. Chen, commercial aircraft have minimal EMP shielding. However, we are deploying countermeasures that should provide some protection. The radio exploded with new voices as military communications flooded the airwaves. Maya could hear coordinated responses from multiple commands: NORAD, Strategic Command, Air Force Global Strike Command, and others. The entire American military apparatus was responding to her broadcast. Sarah, Maya said, switching to the open channel, what's your status? Maya, I'm being engaged by multiple aircraft. I think some of them are trying to eliminate me before I can provide you with more information. What information? Maya, the neural pattern duplication technology isn't just being used to replace military personnel. We believe it's being used to replace civilian leaders as well. Members of Congress, cabinet officials, possibly even. Sarah's transmission cut off in a burst of static. Sarah, respond, Maya said urgently. Sarah, do you copy? Kim was scanning radio frequencies frantically. Ma'am, I'm not picking up any signal from Colonel Voss's aircraft. Maya felt sick. Sarah might have been eliminated, or she might have been captured, or she might never have been the real Sarah at all. The uncertainty was worse than knowing. Admiral Hayes, we may have lost contact with Colonel Voss. Dr. Chen, we're tracking multiple aircraft casualties in your vicinity. The situation is extremely fluid, and we cannot confirm the status of all personnel. Rodriguez was studying his navigation display. Admiral, we're approaching the Nebraska facility, but I'm reading multiple aircraft converging on our position from all directions. Captain Rodriguez, maintain course. We have assets moving to intercept hostile aircraft, but you may encounter additional opposition before reaching the facility. Maya moved to the cockpit window, scanning the sky for signs of the approaching aircraft. In the distance, she could see contrails converging from multiple directions, a coordinated response involving dozens of military aircraft. Captain, this is starting to look like a major air battle. Ms. Chen, I've been flying for 22 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Whatever you designed, it's important enough to trigger a military response involving most of the United States Air Force. Kim was monitoring communications from the approaching aircraft. Ma'am, I'm picking up transmissions from aircraft identifying themselves as belonging to at least 6 different commands. Some of them are giving conflicting orders. Maya felt the familiar weight of military operations gone completely wrong. Kim, can you patch me through to the Nebraska facility directly? Ma'am, I'm trying, but there's significant interference on all frequencies. The radio crackled with Admiral Hayes' voice. Dr. Chen, be advised that the Nebraska facility has been placed under lockdown due to security concerns. We are implementing alternative protocols for your protection. What kind of alternative protocols? Dr. Chen, we're directing you to a mobile command post that can provide the verification and communication capabilities you need while maintaining operational security. Maya felt a chill of suspicion. Mobile command posts could be located anywhere and could be controlled by anyone with sufficient resources. Admiral, how do I verify the legitimacy of this mobile command post? Dr. Chen, you'll have to trust the authentication protocols we've established. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the impossible weight of decisions that could affect millions of lives. Every choice required trusting someone, and trust had become impossible in a world where people could be replaced by artificial copies, programmed to believe they were real. Captain, what's our fuel situation? Rodriguez checked his gauges. We have maybe 20 minutes of flying time left. We need to land soon, regardless of where. Admiral Hayes, what are the coordinates for this mobile command post? Dr. Chen, transmitting coordinates now. Kim received the transmission and plotted the location on her navigation display. Ma'am, it's a civilian airport about 15 minutes from our current position, but I'm reading significant military activity in that area. Maya studied the tactical situation. Landing at the designated coordinates would put them directly into the hands of whoever controlled the mobile command post. But continuing to fly would result in running out of fuel and making an emergency landing with no control over where they ended up. Admiral, I need additional verification of your authority. Dr. Chen, what kind of verification would satisfy you? Maya thought rapidly. I need you to provide information that only the real chairman of the Joint Chiefs would know. Specifically, I need you to tell me about Project Prometheus. The pause before Admiral Hayes' response was long enough to be concerning. Dr. Chen, I'm not familiar with any project by that designation. Maya felt a wave of relief mixed with new concern. Project Prometheus didn't exist. She'd made it up as a test. The real Admiral Hayes would know immediately that no such project existed. The fact that the voice claiming to be Admiral Hayes had hesitated suggested either deception or uncertainty. Admiral, Project Prometheus was a test. There is no such project. I needed to verify that you're really who you claim to be. Dr. Chen, understood. I appreciate your caution given the circumstances. Maya nodded, feeling slightly more confident about the communication. But she was still trapped in a situation where verification was difficult and trust was dangerous. Captain, set course for the coordinates Admiral Hayes provided, but be prepared for evasive action if the situation looks wrong. Rodriguez adjusted their heading toward the designated airport. Ms. Chen, what will you do if this turns out to be another trap? Maya looked out at the sky filled with military aircraft, each representing competing factions in a conflict that had moved far beyond simple national security operations. Captain, at some point you have to stop running and start fighting. I think we're approaching that point. The radio crackled with new communications as Flight 447 approached the designated coordinates. Maya could hear coordinated chatter from ground control, military commanders, and air traffic management. It sounded like a legitimate operation, but she'd learned not to trust appearances. Kim, are you reading any unusual electronic activity around the airport? Kim was scanning multiple frequencies and monitoring electronic emissions. Ma'am, there's significant military-grade communication equipment operating in the area, but it appears to be standard command and control systems. As they descended toward the airport, Maya could see the mobile command post, a collection of military vehicles and communication trailers arranged around what appeared to be a secure perimeter. It looked legitimate, but she'd learned that appearances could be deceiving. Admiral Hayes, we're approaching the designated coordinates. What are our instructions upon landing? Dr. Chen, you'll be met by a security team that will escort you to the command post. Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Kim will be provided with accommodation and protection while we sort out the larger situation. Rodriguez was beginning his landing approach, following standard procedures despite the extraordinary circumstances. Miss Chen, once we're on the ground, we're committed to whatever happens next. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. In the next few minutes, she would either be delivered to legitimate authorities who could help her stop a nuclear weapons attack, or she would be captured by hostile forces who would use her to enable that attack. Captain, I want you to know that whatever happens, you and Kim have been extraordinary. You've kept 147 civilians safe through circumstances that no airline training could have prepared you for. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Ms. Chen, I still don't completely understand what's happening, but I understand that you've been trying to save lives from the moment this started. That's enough for me. As Flight 447 touched down at the designated airport, Maya could see security vehicles moving into position around the aircraft. Through the terminal windows, she could see military personnel establishing a secure perimeter. Dr. Chen, Admiral Hayes' voice came through the radio. Welcome to Firebase Alpha. You are now under the protection of Joint Task Force Skyfall, specifically created to address this situation. Maya felt a mixture of relief and continued wariness. Admiral, what's the current status of the stolen Skyfall system? Dr. Chen, intelligence suggests that the hostile forces are approximately 6 hours away from completing the activation sequence. However, they still require your neural patterns to finalize the targeting systems. And what's your plan to prevent that from happening? Dr. Chen, we need you to help us create a kill switch that can disable the system remotely. Your knowledge of the neural pattern recognition protocols is essential for developing an effective countermeasure. Maya unbuckled her harness as the aircraft came to a complete stop. Outside, she could see armed security personnel moving into position around Flight 447. Admiral, how do I know that creating a kill switch won't also provide you with the information needed to activate the system yourself? The pause before Admiral Hayes' response was brief but telling. Dr. Chen, you'll have to trust that the people in this command post are working to protect American lives rather than threaten them. Maya looked at Rodriguez and Kim, both of whom were watching her with expressions that mixed respect, concern, and uncertainty about what would happen next. Captain, Kim, it's been an honor flying with you. Rodriguez shook her hand. Miss Chen, whatever you decide to do, remember that there are a lot of people counting on you to make the right choice. Maya nodded and moved toward the aircraft door, where security personnel were waiting to escort her to the mobile command post. As she stepped off Flight 447, she could feel the weight of the moment, the transition from passenger to active participant in an operation that would determine whether millions of Americans lived or died. The mobile command post was larger and more sophisticated than it had appeared from the air. Inside, Maya found herself in a high-tech environment filled with communication equipment, tactical displays, and personnel wearing uniforms from multiple military branches. A woman in an admiral's uniform approached her, middle-aged, authoritative, and carrying herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. Dr. Chen, I'm Admiral Rebecca Hayes. Thank you for trusting us with your safety. Maya studied the Admiral's face, looking for any signs of deception or artificiality. Admiral, I need additional verification of your identity before I provide any information about Skyfall. Admiral Hayes nodded approvingly. Dr. Chen, your caution is appropriate given the circumstances. What kind of verification would satisfy you? I need you to access classified databases and provide me with information about my security clearance history that only the real military command structure would have. Admiral Hayes moved to a secure terminal and began entering commands. Within minutes, she had accessed Maya's complete classified history, every project, every clearance level, every security review going back to her initial military service. Dr. Chen, according to our records, you held cosmic-level clearance for 6 projects, including Skyfall. You were read into compartmentalized programs involving orbital weapons platforms, neural pattern recognition, and advanced targeting systems. Your work was classified under special access programs that were limited to fewer than 20 personnel. Maya felt reassured by the accuracy and detail of the information. Admiral, that information appears to be correct. Dr. Chen, we also have records indicating that you requested transfer to civilian status 3 years ago due to concerns about the potential misuse of the technologies you were developing. Maya nodded. That's also correct. I was concerned that the neural pattern recognition systems could be used for purposes other than security authentication. Admiral Hayes gestured toward a secure briefing room. Dr. Chen, I think it's time you learned the complete truth about what you helped create. Maya followed the Admiral into the briefing room, where large displays showed satellite imagery, technical schematics, and real-time tracking data. Dr. Chen, Skyfall is currently positioned in low Earth orbit, approximately 200 miles above the continental United States. The stolen control codes have been partially activated, but the system cannot complete its targeting sequence without your neural pattern authentication. Maya studied the displays, recognizing technical details from her original design work. Admiral, how long do we have before they attempt to force activation without my cooperation? Dr. Chen, intelligence suggests they may try to use electromagnetic extraction of your neural patterns. It's a painful and potentially fatal process, but it could provide them with the authentication codes they need. Maya felt a chill. How would they perform electromagnetic extraction? Dr. Chen, the technology involves using powerful magnetic fields to map and extract neural patterns directly from the brain. The process is experimental and extremely dangerous, but if successful, it would give them a copy of your authentication patterns. Maya realized that her situation was even more desperate than she'd understood. She wasn't just the key to operating Skyfall. She was the source material for creating that key through potentially lethal means. Admiral, what's your plan to prevent that from happening? Admiral Hayes activated additional displays showing technical schematics and operational plans. Dr. Chen, we want you to help us create a false neural pattern that appears authentic but actually contains a virus designed to disable Skyfall systems. Maya studied the proposed plan, her engineering mind immediately grasping the technical challenges and possibilities. Admiral, that's theoretically possible, but it would require perfect replication of my neural patterns with subtle modifications that wouldn't be detected by the system security protocols. Dr. Chen, we have the technical capability to create such a replication, but we need your cooperation to ensure the modifications are properly integrated. Maya considered the proposal carefully. Creating a false neural pattern would require revealing the authentic pattern, which could be dangerous if the people she was working with weren't legitimate. But it might also be the only way to prevent nuclear weapons from being deployed against American cities. Admiral, how do I know you won't use the authentic neural patterns for your own purposes? Admiral Hayes met her eyes with an expression of absolute sincerity. Dr. Chen, you don't. In operations like this, trust becomes a strategic choice rather than an emotional comfort. You have to decide whether the risk of helping us is greater than the risk of not helping us. Maya felt the weight of the decision. Every choice carried enormous risks, and every delay brought the world closer to nuclear attacks that could kill millions of people. Admiral, I need to understand one more thing. If Skyfall is nuclear capable, why wasn't I told that during development? Admiral Hayes paused, and Maya could see the internal struggle of someone deciding how much classified information to reveal. Dr. Chen's Skyfall was designed with multiple payload capabilities from the beginning. The nuclear option was always part of the system, but access to that information was restricted to personnel with specific need-to-know authorization. And I didn't have that authorization? Dr. Chen, your authorization was limited to the guidance and targeting systems. The payload specifications were handled by a different team with different clearances. Maya felt a wave of anger and betrayal. She'd spent years designing what she thought was a conventional weapons system, only to discover that she'd unknowingly contributed to a nuclear weapons platform. Admiral, how many other people worked on Skyfall without knowing its true capabilities? Dr. Chen, compartmentalization is essential for security in classified programs. Most personnel working on any given project have access only to the information necessary for their specific responsibilities. Maya nodded, understanding the logic but hating the implications. Compartmentalization meant that dozens of people could contribute to weapons of mass destruction without knowing what they were building. Admiral, if I help you create this false neural pattern, what guarantee do I have that the countermeasures will work? Dr. Chen, in military operations there are no guarantees, but our technical analysis suggests a high probability of success if the false pattern is properly constructed. Maya looked around the briefing room, studying the faces of the military personnel working frantically to coordinate the response to the Skyfall crisis. These appeared to be dedicated professionals trying to prevent a catastrophic attack on American cities. Admiral, I'll help you create the false neural pattern, but I want real-time monitoring of the process, and I want the ability to abort if anything seems wrong. Admiral Hayes nodded. Dr. Chen, those terms are acceptable. But you should understand that once we begin the process, we'll be committed to following through. Partial implementation could be worse than no implementation. Maya felt the familiar weight of accepting an impossible mission with catastrophic consequences for failure. Admiral, let's prevent some nuclear weapons from destroying American cities. We're approaching the climactic moments of this epic tale, and the tension is at its peak. Creating stories of this scope and detail requires not just writing talent, but careful plotting, character development, and attention to every narrative thread. We've journeyed through nearly 40,000 words together, and I hope every moment has kept you engaged. If this story has drawn you in and kept you listening, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share this epic with anyone who loves immersive storytelling, and hit that notification bell for more incredible adventures. Now, let's witness how everything comes together in these final, crucial moments. The neural pattern extraction chamber looked like something from a science fiction nightmare, a sterile white room dominated by an enormous electromagnetic apparatus that hummed with barely contained energy. Maya stood at the threshold, feeling the weight of what she was about to do. Dr. Chen, Admiral Hayes said, the process will take approximately 45 minutes. During that time, you'll experience some discomfort as the magnetic fields map your neural patterns. Maya studied the technical specifications displayed on multiple monitors around the chamber. Admiral, what kind of discomfort are we talking about? Dr. Chen, subjects report headaches, disorientation, and temporary memory fragmentation. The effects are usually temporary, but in rare cases there can be lasting neurological damage. Maya felt a chill. How rare! Dr. Chen, approximately 15% of subjects experience some form of permanent neurological impact. Maya closed her eyes, calculating the risks. A 15% chance of permanent brain damage versus the certainty of nuclear weapons being deployed against American cities if she refused to cooperate. Admiral, what's the current status of the stolen Skyfall system? Admiral Hayes activated a large display showing real-time satellite tracking. Dr. Chen, the hostile forces have positioned themselves at a facility approximately 200 miles from here. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to attempt electromagnetic extraction of your neural patterns using cruder methods. Maya studied the satellite imagery, recognizing the signs of a sophisticated operation. How did they get access to electromagnetic extraction technology? Dr. Chen, we believe the technology was stolen from the same facility where Skyfall was developed. The perpetrators appear to have access to multiple classified technologies. Maya felt sick. Not only had someone stolen Skyfall, but they'd also stolen the tools necessary to force her cooperation through potentially lethal means. Admiral, if they have extraction technology, why haven't they used it already? Dr. Chen, our intelligence suggests they're still missing critical components. However, they may be able to complete their extraction capability within hours. Maya realized that her window for action was closing rapidly. Every hour of delay increased the likelihood that the hostile forces would develop the capability to extract her neural patterns without her cooperation. Admiral, let's begin the process. Maya stepped into the extraction chamber, feeling the electromagnetic fields immediately. The sensation was like having every nerve in her body connected to a low-voltage electrical current, not painful exactly, but deeply unsettling. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Hayes' voice came through the chamber's communication system. "We're beginning the initial mapping sequence. Try to remain as still as possible." Maya closed her eyes as the electromagnetic apparatus began its work. She could feel the magnetic fields penetrating her skull, mapping the electrical patterns of her brain with precision that bordered on invasive. On the monitors outside the chamber, Maya could see her neural patterns appearing as complex three-dimensional models, swirling electrical activity that represented her thoughts, memories, and decision-making processes. "Dr. Chen," one of the technicians announced, "we're getting excellent resolution on the pattern mapping. The authentication sequences are clearly defined." Maya watched her own mind being digitized in real time, feeling a profound sense of violation mixed with scientific fascination. The technology was remarkable, but the implications were terrifying. "Admiral," she said through the communication system, "how accurate is this mapping?" "Dr. Chen, our technology can reproduce neural patterns with 97% accuracy. That's sufficient to fool most authentication systems." Maya felt a wave of concern. "Most authentication systems? What about Skyfall specifically?" "Dr. Chen, Skyfall's authentication is more sophisticated than standard systems. We're aiming for 99% accuracy to ensure successful integration." Maya realized that the margin for error was uncomfortably small. If the false neural pattern wasn't accurate enough, the countermeasures might fail, leaving Skyfall fully operational and under hostile control. "Admiral, what happens if the false pattern is rejected by Skyfall's authentication system?" The pause before Admiral Hayes' response was concerning. "Dr. Chen, if the false pattern is rejected, the system will likely default to emergency activation protocols. That could result in immediate deployment of nuclear weapons." Maya felt the world shift around her. Creating the false neural pattern wasn't just an attempt to disable Skyfall. It was a gamble that could accidentally trigger the very attack they were trying to prevent. "Admiral, you're telling me that if we fail, we might accidentally cause a nuclear attack on American cities?" "Dr. Chen, the risk exists, but our technical analysis suggests the probability is low." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the electromagnetic fields continuing to map her brain while she processed the horrible mathematics of the situation. They were trying to prevent nuclear weapons from being used by taking actions that might accidentally cause nuclear weapons to be used. "Dr. Chen," one of the technicians called out, "we're detecting some unusual patterns in the authentication sequences." Maya opened her eyes, studying the neural pattern displays. "What kind of unusual patterns?" "Dr. Chen, there appear to be embedded security protocols that we didn't expect. Your neural patterns contain additional layers of authentication that aren't in the original Skyfall specifications." Maya felt a chill of realization. "Admiral, I think there's something about my neural patterns that I wasn't told during the original project." Admiral Hayes was studying the technical displays with growing concern. "Dr. Chen, what kind of additional protocols are you referring to?" "Admiral, the authentication system isn't just keyed to my neural patterns, it's keyed to my emotional and psychological responses as well. Skyfall won't activate unless I'm genuinely convinced that activation is necessary for national security." The implications of Maya's discovery hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If Skyfall required not just her neural patterns but also her genuine psychological consent, then creating a false pattern wouldn't be sufficient to control the system. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Hayes said quietly, "are you saying that Skyfall can't be activated by someone who doesn't believe activation is justified?" "Admiral, that's exactly what I'm saying. The system was designed to prevent unauthorized use by ensuring that activation requires both technical authentication and psychological conviction." Maya realized that the neural pattern recognition system she'd designed was more sophisticated than even she'd understood. It wasn't just a security measure. It was a moral safeguard that required the operator to genuinely believe they were acting in defense of national security. "Admiral, this changes everything. The hostile forces can't activate Skyfall just by forcing me to provide neural patterns. They have to convince me that activation is morally justified." Admiral Hayes was conferring with her technical staff, their voices urgent but too low for Maya to overhear. Finally, she turned back to the communication system. Dr. Chen, if psychological conviction is required for activation, then the false neural pattern approach won't work. We need to develop a different strategy. Maya felt a mixture of relief and new concern. The false neural pattern approach had carried enormous risks of accidental activation. But if that approach wouldn't work, it meant they needed to find another way to prevent the hostile forces from using Skyfall. Admiral, what are our alternatives? Dr. Chen, we could attempt to locate and neutralize the hostile forces before they complete their extraction capability, but that approach carries significant risks of civilian casualties. Maya studied the satellite imagery showing the facility where the hostile forces had positioned themselves. Admiral, what kind of facility are they using? Dr. Chen, intelligence suggests they've taken control of a civilian research facility. There may be dozens of innocent personnel being held as hostages. Maya felt sick. The hostile forces had chosen their position specifically to complicate any military response. Attacking the facility would risk killing innocent people. But allowing the hostile forces to continue their work would risk nuclear attacks on American cities. Admiral, is there any way to evacuate the civilian personnel before taking action against the hostile forces? Dr. Chen, we're exploring multiple options, but the hostile forces have made it clear that any attempt at evacuation will result in immediate execution of the hostages. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the electromagnetic fields continuing to probe her brain while she processed impossible choices. Every option carried enormous risks of civilian casualties, and every delay increased the likelihood of nuclear weapons being deployed. Admiral, there's one more option we haven't considered. Dr. Chen, what option is that? Maya opened her eyes, meeting Admiral Hayes' gaze through the chamber's observation window. I go to them voluntarily. If they need my genuine psychological conviction to activate Skyfall, then I'm the only person who can prevent activation by refusing to cooperate. The silence in the extraction chamber was profound. Maya could see Admiral Hayes conferring urgently with her staff, their expressions mixing alarm with reluctant recognition that Maya's proposal might be the only viable solution. Dr. Chen, that approach would place you directly in the hands of hostile forces who have already demonstrated willingness to use lethal extraction methods. Admiral, but it would also ensure that Skyfall cannot be activated without my voluntary cooperation. If I'm present and refusing to authenticate the system, they can't complete the activation sequence. Maya realized that her proposal was essentially offering herself as a human safeguard against nuclear weapons deployment. By placing herself in the hands of the hostile forces, she could prevent them from achieving their objective while buying time for military forces to develop alternative solutions. Admiral, how long would it take for military forces to assault the facility where the hostile forces are positioned? Dr. Chen, with proper planning and coordination, we could be ready for simultaneous action within 6 hours. But the risk to civilian hostages would be significant. Maya felt the weight of the decision. 6 hours was a long time to be in the hands of people willing to use electromagnetic extraction to forcibly map her neural patterns. But it might also be long enough for military forces to develop a plan that could neutralize the hostile forces while minimizing civilian casualties. Admiral, I think voluntary surrender is our best option. Admiral Hayes was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing options that all carried catastrophic risks. Finally, she activated the communication system. Dr. Chen, if you're determined to pursue this course of action, we'll need to equip you with covert communication devices and emergency signaling capability. Maya nodded, feeling the familiar weight of accepting a mission that might require sacrificing her life to save others. Admiral, let's prevent some nuclear weapons from destroying American cities. The electromagnetic apparatus powered down, and Maya stepped out of the extraction chamber feeling disoriented but determined. In the next few hours, she would voluntarily place herself in the hands of people who wanted to force her to activate a nuclear weapons platform. It was possibly the most dangerous mission she'd ever accepted, but it might also be the only way to prevent millions of American deaths. Admiral, she said, let's make contact with the hostile forces and arrange my surrender. Admiral Hayes nodded grimly. Dr. Chen, I hope you understand what you're volunteering for. Maya looked around the mobile command post, studying the faces of the military personnel who were working desperately to prevent nuclear weapons from being deployed against American cities. Admiral, I understand perfectly. I'm volunteering to be the last line of defense. between a stolen weapons system and the destruction of everything we've sworn to protect. As Admiral Hayes began coordinating the arrangements for Maya's voluntary surrender, Maya felt the cold certainty of approaching a moment that would determine whether her engineering skills would be used to save American cities or destroy them. The darkest hour of the crisis was about to beg. The hostile forces had chosen their meeting location with tactical precision, an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Denver, isolated enough to prevent easy surveillance, but close enough to civilization to complicate any military response. Maya sat in the passenger seat of an unmarked government vehicle, watching the complex grow larger through the windshield as they approached. Dr. Chen, Agent Martinez said from the driver's seat, "We have teams positioned at multiple points around the perimeter, but you should understand that once you're inside that facility, we may have limited ability to provide immediate assistance." Maya nodded, checking the concealed communication devices that had been surgically implanted under her skin during the 2-hour preparation period. "Agent Martinez, what's the current intelligence on the number of personnel inside the facility?" Dr. Chen, thermal imaging suggests approximately 12 to 15 individuals, but we can't determine how many are hostile forces versus civilian hostages. Maya studied the facility's exterior as they approached the designated meeting point. The building showed signs of recent modification. New communication equipment on the roof, reinforced security measures around the entrances, and what appeared to be electromagnetic shielding around several windows. Entry Furies, Agent Martinez, the electromagnetic shielding suggests they're serious about neural pattern extraction. That equipment requires significant power and technical expertise. Dr. Chen, intelligence analysis confirms that the hostile forces have access to military-grade extraction technology. They're not improvising. This is a sophisticated operation. Maya felt a chill as the vehicle came to a stop at the facility's main entrance. In a few minutes, she would voluntarily walk into the hands of people who wanted to force her to activate nuclear weapons against American cities. "Agent Martinez, if this goes wrong, if they successfully extract my neural patterns and activate Skyfall, what's the military's contingency plan?" Agent Martinez was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Chen, the contingency plan involves preemptive nuclear strikes against the orbital platform. It would prevent Skyfall from being used against American cities, but it would also constitute the first military use of nuclear weapons since 1945. Maya felt the weight of that revelation. If she failed to prevent the hostile forces from activating Skyfall, the American military would respond with nuclear weapons, making her mission not just about preventing nuclear attacks, but about preventing nuclear warfare entirely. Agent Martinez, launching nuclear weapons against an orbital platform would be visible to every nuclear power on Earth. That could trigger responses from Russia, China, or others. Dr. Chen, that's why your mission is critical. You're not just preventing nuclear attacks on American cities. You're potentially preventing global nuclear conflict." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the enormous weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just walking into a hostage situation. She was walking into a situation where her success or failure could determine whether the world descended into nuclear warfare. "Agent Martinez, I'm ready." Maya stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the facility's main entrance, where 2 figures in tactical gear were waiting for her. As she approached, she could see that they were well-equipped and professionally trained. This wasn't a ragtag terrorist organization, but a sophisticated military operation. "Dr. Chen," one of the figures called out, "please approach slowly with your hands visible." Maya complied, walking steadily toward the entrance while scanning for any signs of the civilian hostages Agent Martinez had mentioned. The facility appeared to be under complete control of the hostile forces. "Dr. Chen, we're going to need to conduct a security scan before we proceed." Maya submitted to an electronic search that was thorough but not invasive enough to detect the surgically implanted communication devices. The hostile forces were professional but not paranoid enough to assume surgical implantation. "Dr. Chen, welcome to our facility." "I'm Colonel David Reeves, United States Army." Maya studied the man who had introduced himself as Colonel Reeves. He appeared to be in his 50s, carried himself with military bearing, and spoke with the confidence of someone accustomed to command authority. Colonel Hash, she was nobody sitting in 3B until flight control radioed her impossible shot operational code. The static crackled through the cabin speakers with an urgency that made every passenger look up from their phones. Maya Chen had been sketching aircraft engine schematics in her notebook, lost in the familiar comfort of technical drawings, when the pilot's voice cut through the white noise of Flight 447's engines. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some communication difficulties with air traffic control. Please remain calm while we—" The transmission cut out. Then, impossibly, a different voice came through the intercom system, not the captain's reassuring baritone, but a clipped, military-precise tone that made Maya's blood freeze. "Passenger in seat 3B, Maya Chen. Respond immediately. Authorization code, impossible shot. Repeat, impossible shot." Maya's pen fell from her fingers, clattering onto the tray table. Around her, the other passengers murmured in confusion, some laughing nervously at what they assumed was some kind of mistake or prank. The businessman in 3A glanced at her nameplate on her carry-on bag, then at her face, his expression shifting from amusement to concern. "That's you, isn't it?" he whispered. Maya couldn't breathe. Impossible shot. She hadn't heard those words in 3 years. Hadn't expected to ever hear them again. Her hands trembled as she reached for the call button, but before she could press it, the voice returned. "Maya Chen, respond now. We have a code black situation. Repeat, code black. Your country needs you." The elderly woman in 3C leaned forward, her voice sharp with worry. "Dear, what's happening? Who are these people?" Maya stared at the intercom speaker above her head, her mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Code black meant imminent national security threat, but she was nobody now. Just a former Air Force engineer who designed missile guidance systems for a defense contractor in Seattle. She'd left the classified world behind, traded her security clearance for a quiet life of commercial aviation consulting. Except they'd found her anyway, 37,000 feet above the ground, trapped in a metal tube with nowhere to run. The intercom crackled again. "Maya, we know you can hear us. Flight 447 is now under federal emergency protocols. You have 2 minutes to acknowledge, or we initiate contingency measures." The words hit her like ice water. Contingency measures. She knew what that meant, and it wasn't good for anyone on this plane. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Flight attendant." The young man in the Navy uniform appeared instantly, his professional smile flickering as he saw her pale face. "Yes, ma'am? Is everything all right?" "I need to speak to your captain, now." "Ma'am, I'm sure whatever the announcement was about, it's just some kind of technical." "It's not technical." Maya stood up, her legs unsteady. "And if I don't get to that cockpit in the next 90 seconds, everyone on this plane is going to die." The flight attendant's expression changed completely. Around them, conversations died as passengers caught the deadly seriousness in her tone. A child started crying somewhere toward the back of the plane. "Ma'am, I can't just—" "Tell your captain that code black has been authenticated," Maya said, louder now, her voice carrying the authority she'd thought she'd left behind. "Tell him Maya Chen, former DARPA liaison, clearance level cosmic, is requesting immediate access to flight communications. Tell him we have approximately 60 seconds before this becomes everyone's worst nightmare." The flight attendant stared at her for a heartbeat, then turned and walked quickly toward the cockpit, speaking rapidly into his headset. Maya sank back into her seat, aware that every eye in first class was on her. Her notebook lay open, filled with engine diagrams that suddenly seemed quaint compared to what was coming. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget the weight of national security, the pressure of decisions that could save or damn thousands of lives. Now it had found her again, and she had no idea why. The businessman beside her cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I don't mean to pry, but should we be worried?" Maya looked at him, really looked. Mid-50s, expensive suit, wedding ring, probably headed home to a family who expected him for dinner. Just like the 147 other souls on this plane, who had no idea their Tuesday afternoon flight had just become ground zero for something that required the activation of an agent who officially didn't exist. "Yes," she said quietly, "you should be very worried." The cockpit door opened, and Captain Rodriguez emerged, his face grim. Behind him, Maya could see the co-pilot frantically working the radio. Rodriguez walked straight to her seat, ignoring the stares and whispered questions from other passengers. "Miss Chen, I'm going to need you to come with me, now." Maya nodded and stood, leaving her notebook behind. As she followed the captain toward the cockpit, she heard the intercom crackle one more time. 60 seconds, Maya, and counting. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching. Creating and narrating these detailed novel-length stories takes tremendous time and research to bring you the most engaging content possible. We're embarking on a journey of nearly 50,000 words together. That's a full novella. If you're already hooked by what you've heard, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this story with someone who would enjoy it, and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. This is going to be an epic adventure, so get comfortable, and let's continue with this remarkable tale.